Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ronkat and I love to talk about travel, career, and general life topics. If that sounds like your sort of thing, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk about multitasking. Multitasking is one of those, I want to say necessary evils sometimes, but personally for me, multitasking is something that I really try not to do and something I don't heavily believe in. Now, of course, like I said, I try not to do it, meaning there are some instances where it's unavoidable and I just got to do it. But in general, I try not to multitask. I think maybe 10-ish years ago, multitasking was still very much thought of as like this really important thing that everyone needed to know how to do. And it's an important skill and it sets you apart and all of this and all of that. And it is, but multitasking truly is something that is actually really hard for people to do. Now, I've heard multitasking defined in two different ways. One of them is doing one or more tasks at the same time, and then the other one is switching between tasks. Now, for the former definition of doing multiple tasks at the same time, I don't really believe that. I don't think it is really humanly possible to literally be doing two things at the same time. At least, I don't think it's humanly possible, sustainable, and foolproof, if that makes sense. But then even for switching back and forth between tasks, I also don't know that that's always like the best, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I work. And so I definitely know that there's times where you got to multitask when you're listening to a meeting and maybe working on something else. But in general, whenever it is avoidable, I really try to avoid it. There's been a lot of research in more recent years that talks about the human mind and how realistically our minds are really not capable of multitasking. Our minds are not capable of being split between two different things at the same time that require brain energy. You know, something that you can do mindlessly, like maybe walking and talking, that isn't, for me, that's not like a strong example of multitasking. But anything that actually requires brain power for you to be somewhat involved in the two activities, it's not going to work. Now, there are a lot of studies that have actually been done to see how well humans can multitask. And in one of the studies that I was reading through the Cleveland Clinic, I think about 2.5% of the population can actually truly multitask. So that means that the rest of us, what we're probably doing is just switching between tasks in a way that is so subtle that we ourselves don't realize it. So if you are trying to catch up on your email, you're listening to a phone call, the moment that you pay attention to that email over the phone call, you've completely lost track of whatever it is that was being said in that phone call. And then when they call you back and you have to try to remember where they left off, that's usually where you have those people on the phone. Can you repeat the question? You know? So multitasking is not something that our brains are really, really built to be able to do. And it is something that people have tried to talk up over time to make it seem like it's this super skill. But in reality, your brain is not wired to work that way. Generally for me, I try not to multitask because I do feel it's a bit of a waste of time. This typically happens if you were supposed to be paying attention to one thing, you were paying attention to another, and now you need to ask for a question to repeat it, or you need to read something again, or you need, you know, whatever the case might be. So generally, I try my best to not multitask. What I like to do instead sometimes is have targeted work sprints. And so what this might mean is I might set myself up with 30 minutes to run through a document. I might set myself up with 15 minutes to have a phone call. You know, whatever it is that I can put a time limit on and just know that for that duration of time, that's all I'm doing. For me, I often find that that's a lot more useful and a lot more productive than me trying to multitask and do two things at the same time. Another way that I avoid multitasking whenever possible is to sometimes just kind of assume a position that prevents me from multitasking. And so if I'm listening in on a phone call, rather than like being all up in my laptop scrolling back and forth, I might just sit back because that forces me to really just listen in. Another thing that I do to avoid multitasking is to make a to-do list. Sometimes the reason why we multitask might be because we just remembered at that exact same moment that we have something else that we need to do. But when you have a to-do list, it allows you to write that other thing or task down and to still keep track of it for when you are done with this current item. Another way to also make sure that you are avoiding multitasking is to prioritize your tasks appropriately. More often than not, the reason why some of us will multitask is because there's something that's due that we forgot about, didn't realize, whatever the case might be, and we're trying to get it done ASAP. But if you are prioritizing your work and you're giving yourself ample time to get the work done, hopefully that will help you to avoid having to end up doubling up on stuff just to get it done. And now this may sound a little counterintuitive, but it is actually important every once in a while to give your mind a break. When whether you're multitasking, whether you're not trying to multitask, you are using your mind. And so being able to give your mind a break, I feel, always helps you to come back fresher to whatever it is that you're working on, which means that you probably will be able to give to that work item a little bit more than you probably would if you were feeling burned out or if you had already been working for such a long period of time. So I know I've laid out some of the things that I do to avoid multitasking, but if you are ever in a position where you do have to multitask, I think there are a few ways that you can make it work. Number one, let's say that you're on a call where maybe you're not leading, you're not a key decision maker, and you're not the person taking notes. One thing that you could do is to go back to read the meeting minutes to refresh your mind or pick up on the high points from the conversation. Another way that I feel that you can make it work if you have to multitask is by communicating, actually. So if I'm listening in on a call or I'm talking to someone, and let's say I'm working on something on the side, but they need to talk to me really quick to ask me an important question, I might let them know I'm multitasking. So if you have to repeat, or if you know that you need me to pay specific attention to something, please call my attention to it, right? For me, that's a way to make sure that it really gives me the opportunity to kind of pause really quick on one thing, or to pull my attention a little bit more from one item and quickly divert it to the other. In general, like I said, our brains are really not wired, at least for 97.5% of the population, our brains are really not wired to multitask. So as much as is possible, try to be intentional about how you work so that you are switching off on complete tasks or switching off at a reasonable stopping point between tasks and not overburdening your mind. As always, please make sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to my channel for more travel, career, and general living topics. See you next time.